Tabitha, y'all everybody sick? Everybody, all the kids back to school and everybody got a cold and sick and everything going on?
COVID, flu.
I've been sick all week. We went yesterday. My brother-in-law had a cookout in Jasper and we went and I couldn't even hardly eat anything. Didn't have no appetite. I've been like this all week, dizzy and everything else. As much as my head's,
COVID outbreak?
yes.
Yeah, there's several that have it, y'all.
I don't know if that's what I had or not. Me and David took a test and come back negative. I don't think I felt that bad since I got the shot. That's the last time I felt that bad.
A lot
I
of
think.
people just come back negative, but
Yeah. It wasn't no fun. Debbie still don't feel very good. She got the kids there. I was reading, she didn't
I know
come.
Tamara now had COVID and the flu.
Yeah. This week's lessons in Psalms 91. And in the teacher's book here, it starts talking about the trustworthiness of others, is how much we trust others blindly. That's a lot. And you don't think you do, but you really do. And it's got another word in here. It said ignorance is bliss. So sometimes that's the best thing when you go in there. And it's talking about restaurant workers here. It said sometimes ignorance is bliss, is to just don't know what's going on with your food. That's what they say. You don't want to see how the hot dog's made. You just want to eat it. But that's what they're saying here. Sometimes, it starts out talking about the trust we put in people and blind trust sometimes. Even though we know people are faulty, people can do stuff wrong, and people will lead you down the wrong road on purpose, and a lot of things like that. But we do put blind faith in people. The biggest blind faith we put in people every day is driving down the road, hoping that they're in the same mindset we are to stay in our lane. But we put a lot of blind faith or blind trust, whatever you'd call it, into people and not knowing their character. And then the lesson we're going to get into today, we're going to talk about putting our trust and faith in God and knowing His character. The difference in knowing that we can trust Him to have our best in heart. We trust our parents to have our best interests in heart all the time. Our parents are people just like we are, and they can make mistakes, whether they mean to or not. No parent's going to intentionally do anything to harm their child, hopefully. But parents do make mistakes from time to time, and we as children, we put a lot of faith in our parents. And when you see as God the Father is our parent, but He doesn't make any mistakes, it makes it easier to believe everything that He is telling us is true, because He is definitely looking out for our best interests, and we have the whole Bible to prove that. But we'll start out in Psalms 91, verses 1 and 2. It says, "He that dwelleth in a secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him I will trust." So it says the position of God here. It talks about Him, talks about that here, about the Most High. And it says, it's talking about the Most High God. There's nothing higher. It said, and it's talking about being near the, let me see, where was that? In the secret place of the Most High, or under the shadow of the Almighty there. It's talking about being near the Most High is the most secure place a person could be. We go in the shadow. To be in something's shadow, you're pretty close. To be in something's shadow, in a person's shadow, in a tree's shadow, and whatever it is, you're usually pretty close to the object that you're in the shadow of. So being in the shadow of the Almighty or the Most High, you're very close to God. And it makes me think of in the New Testament when Jesus was crossing the sea in the boat, and everyone got scared, and they was like, "We're gonna die. Do you not care?" You know, they were in the shadow of the Most High, and they didn't realize it. From the same thing here, they was in the shadow of the Most High God and had no idea that they was as safe as they were. And he told them that as well. You know, have you not learned? You know, I'm not sure exactly how he worded it, but it was basically, do you not understand yet? You know, is kind of what he told to him. You know, so. And it says, let's see. Also, it says what is it? Well, I've done one over that, so what does it take to minute? Shut up. It said also God is a refuge and a fortress. And this is the part that I know we've talked about it in several lessons before, but the refuge and the fortress, if you're in a war and you have a refuge or fortress, or if someone's coming after you and you lock yourself in something to keep them away from you, doesn't mean the trouble has gone away. It means that you're secure and you're safe and where you're at. We all got our safe place that we go to get away from the world, and that's the place that we feel safe at, and it'll talk more about that in this lesson. But it doesn't mean the trouble has gone away. It means that you have protection, you have a safe place, somewhere safe you can go. And that's what it's referred to here as the refuge. There in verse 2 it says, "He is my refuge and my fortress and my God, and in him I'll trust." Is even though there is things that happen and things that goes on, I'll still trust God. He will still be my safe place, and he can still take care of me regardless of all the bad things that still, it says here in the lesson, it says it still lurks outside the walls. You're still safe, you know, or you still have your center anyway in God. But I like this part here, and I put a note on here in my thing in the teacher's book, and it says one of them things that you hear people say something, so they ought to put that on a t-shirt. Well, that's kind of what this is, and it's talking about feelings sometimes. It says, feelings should not determine our decisions. Feelings should follow our decisions. So sometimes we get that backwards. We get the feelings in front of our decisions, and as humans, as people, we make a lot of decisions. We see it on the news every night, politics, whatever you want to call it. We see decisions made on feelings, not on thought, and then everybody tries to make the truth work around the feelings, and it very seldom does. Works to get the truth in line with feelings sometimes is hard to do, but we see a lot of it in politics and you get yourself in a circle that you can't get out of by saying everything is based off feelings, because not everybody feels the same. So if truth's not there and you're going off feelings, then everyone's different. There's no absolute to feelings, and there's no solid truth in feelings. There's nothing permanent in feelings. It can be all over the place. And that's what happens. You see it in politics. They'll get a big group will get on board with this or that. Well, then it starts crossing up with this other group we got on board with a couple of weeks ago because of their feelings sounded so good, and the public liked their feelings so much. We got on board with that, but now that feeling's changed, and now we're crossing with each other. We got both groups going against each other. So not always going off feelings is not always the right way. Then we'll go on to verse 3 and 4. It says, "Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust his truth, and shall be thy shield and buckler." Okay, I didn't know what fowler was. but I do now, and it makes sense. It's fowlers, just like what it says. Fowl with ER is a person. You see them on movies a lot in New York and places like that where they use pigeons. That was probably used to be a really big thing, and it tells a story here I'll read. But a fowler is a person that works with birds, and in this case, they're catching birds. And how they caught birds is they would take 2 young birds and raise them, and I guess they were tame and to some extent or whatever, and then they would attract wild birds to come in, and they would throw a snare, net, whatever you want to call it in this situation, what it says here, or whatever they had to catch the other birds with, that's what they would use to catch the other birds with. So the ones you raised are basically bait, and all the other birds that come in, and that's where it comes in here. It said, surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler. So that's the same thing. You've got people that are, I guess you could, to put it into people, you've got people doing the same thing. They're taking things that sound good, things that look good or whatever to catch everyone in, and then you throwing that over everybody and you've got them all. So you can look at it like that, I guess. But that's what a fowler is. The other thing mentioned in here is buckler, shield and buckler. And I never knew. I still don't think it tells me what a buckler is, but it's. I guess it's something similar to a shield. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think it's just a smaller version.
Like a
something
shield?
you'd wear before arm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I've seen some of the old, like the Roman movies and stuff where they're fighting, they had like a shield on their arms, and then they had the big ones as well. So that makes sense. But it talks about this shield and buckler kind of in the lesson here. It says, or in the verse 4, it says, his truth shall be thy shield and thy buckler. So that's kind of going back to the same thing we were talking about in verse 1 and 2, is the refuge and fortress. Shield and buckler is doing the same thing. They're holding up. The shield is meant to protect against someone coming after you. The shield doesn't, I mean, you can, I guess you could hit someone with a shield, but a shield is meant to protect you from someone attacking you and you're fighting with your other arm. So the shield is the same thing as the refuge and everything like that. God is, as he's referring to, God here is the shield. The enemy is still coming, but I do have a shield and something protecting me. Didn't stop the enemy from coming, but I do have a shield. I do have God protecting me. And it says, Proverbs, it talks about 1 through 8 here, says, encourages us to trust in the Lord and take him at his word. And when we do, he'll direct our paths and shield us from the enemy. When we don't, our way will be very hard, because you don't want to have to do it on your own. Seems like every time you try to do something on your own, go through something extremely hard, it makes it even more hard. If you're trying to go outside of the will of God and do things on your own, it's really tough. Then we'll go to verse 5 and 6. Anybody got anything they want to add up to here? Verse 5 and 6 says, thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor the pestilence that walk in the darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Is that what it said? Noonday. Yeah, noonday. It said, terror of the night, it's not being able to see the enemy. You could imagine if during their time they had lamps, things like that, didn't put off an enormous amount of light. So anything out in the dark, it wasn't like today. We're saturated in light now, worse than when I remember when I was a kid. You could sit out at night on the hood of the car and see stars as far as you can see. You can't see them anymore, because unless you get way out in the country, you may be able to in Red Bay, but you can't Hackleburg city limits, because it's so light saturated. You can't see as much as you used to. Sometimes I think it's on purpose, but I don't know. But you just can't see the stars as good as you could before. But the not being able to see the enemy at night, if you've ever been somewhere really dark, if you hadn't Tabitha can tell you, you've been down Chalk Mine Road to the end of it, turn your lights off. That is dark. That is very, I went down there and pulled a car out before, and you couldn't hardly see your hand in front of your back. It is very dark, and that's what they had during their time, without even a little light sometimes. And you can imagine if you had an enemy coming after you in the dark, how frightening that would be, to not be able to see that enemy. It said that in the terror of the day is an enemy's ability to see us, and they can. You can see them, but they can also see you, so they can pick out their target better if they're going to shoot arrows or whatever they were shooting during that time. But it says down here, it said there's no rest for the hunted in any situation. It said, and God's in His presence, in the midst of uncertainty, chases away our fear and gives us peace, because we know He is our shield, He is our refuge, and He is our fortress. So that gives us the peace, even in times like that, when we're when the enemy is all around. There it says there's no rest for the hunted. In verse 7 and 8, we're kind of changing things here a little bit. It says, 1,000 shall fall by thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shall thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. And it says here in the lesson, it says our enemies will not go unpunished. We may see it on. We may not ever see it. It may not happen in our lifetime. We may never see our enemies go unpunished. But we know sin can't be unrepented sin. Never accepting Jesus, you can't escape that. If you doing wrong will never go unpunished. I guess is the best way to say it. And to have your enemies always against you or always after you like that is one thing. It says here, where does it say that they will see the reward of the wicked? What he's talking about here is God. It says 1,000 shall fall at thy side and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Is nothing on this earth is able to withstand God or to come against God. And God proved that point all through the Bible of the battle of 300 against, what was it? How many? 50,000 basically. It was a lot, and still won. And it's just so many things through the Bible like that just proves how much superior God is to whatever Satan had planned or going on. What was the number? It was way off the number, but it was 300 Israelites, and the maybe been 3,000. I don't know. It was a lot more, 30,000 or something like that. It was a lot.
I was thinking it was more than that.
May have been.
Judges 16 through 20 something.
I need to start writing these verses down before I remember them. And don't remember
I
what.
was thinking it's 2 or 3. Yeah, 300 them. find it.
I can, I've got the Bible on my phone now, and I've got in the habit of reading it there, and it's bigger letters, it's lit up, and I can see it. And I read my phone more than I do my Bible, but I'm reading the Bible, it's just on my phone, the letters are bigger, it's easier to read, it's lit up, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, it's hard to find stuff as quick, seems like sometimes. We're going down to verse 9 and 10. It says, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there is no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. And I can't really summarize this better than it's written here in the teacher's book, and it may be the same in your book too, but I was wanting to read this part. It said, the psalmist's solicitation to trust in the Lord is convincing, so much so that he expected the reader to choose to trust God. He didn't say, if you now have chosen to trust God, he said, because you have made the Lord my refuge and the Most High your habitation. Having already laid out the benefits of trusting God in what we've studied so far, the psalmist simply summarized them and applied them to the reader. He began by telling the reader no evil would befall him and no plague would come near his dwelling. The last part of that, the evil kind of, I don't know if I get exactly what the lesson's trying to say there, but he's still talking about the protection there of God. And then we go into verses 11 through 13. It says, for he shall give his angels charge over thee to keep thee in all ways. They shall bear up thee in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. And thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under feet. So I know verse 12, everybody knows where that's repeated in Matthew, correct? From Satan, when Jesus went out and fasted and Satan come and tempted him, this is what Satan quoted. So Satan knows the Bible is better than we do, probably. At least the word. He probably knows all of it better than we do. But he knows the Bible, but he can't do anything about it. But he was using the Bible here to tempt Jesus, and that's when you look at the whole circle of that's a really huge circle. He was using the Bible to tempt Jesus, using the words from right here from Psalms 91 to tempt Jesus. Same words that we see here. But it says the psalmist elaborated on what the Lord uses to ensure safety of those who trust in him. The first means is the angelic host. Angels minister as God sees fit. God gives them a charge. He tells them what to do, and they carry out his will in regard to believers. God sends angels to keep or guard believers. And angels make a difference in our lives in that they intervene and keep us from harm. Angels aren't sporadic in carrying out their duties. They're reliable and well-equipped to do their jobs. And God trusts them, and we can find comfort in knowing they're near. And God also gives believers, and there in verse 13, strength for their way, and it refers to the lions and the dragon and the adder. Those things very common during their time. Everyone knew exactly what you was talking about. We don't understand what the dragon's talking about. The adder, I think snake, maybe not. But adder is what we consider a snake, I guess. A lot of the older people, I remember when I was a kid, a lot of older people still call them adders. You ever heard anybody say that? Talk about a snake, and I've heard some of the older people when I was a kid, I've heard them call them adders, but there's another word they put before it. You know?
Spreading adder.
Spreading adder or something.
I haven't seen one of those.
Yeah, but I've heard older people talk about snakes as adders before. But the dragon, I don't know what that means. Dragon's what we think it is, or if there was dragons in Psalms, I don't know. Does anybody got any ideas on that? Anybody?
What's that?
On that, what you're talking about, dragons here in Psalms? But anyway, the point of it here is getting at that how the angels will protect us as God wills them to be, as God tells them to do. They will protect us, and they are capable of protecting us in every way that we would need it, as God sees fit to send them to protect us. I've heard a lot of things, a lot of different, I don't know, I'm sure everybody's heard stories of things that happened and worked out, or whatever the situation was, and people will say, an angel has helped me or something like that, and you hear stuff like that. And I've heard that all my life. I've never had an experience like that, but I've heard things like that a lot. So
I've got a footnote that says a dragon is a serpent.
a serpent.
Yeah, an adder is a cobra.
Okay, that makes sense. That's where that spread adder comes from, because of cobra.
Yeah, it spread out like a cobra.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Now, this passage here is the one when Jesus was in the wilderness tempted to Satan.
Right.
This is one of the passages he quoted
Yeah.
when he was up on the temple.
Yep. Said, and Satan is. You said king of the air or king of the earth?
Prince and power of the air.
Of the air. So he's not of the earth. He's of the air.
Well, he's like a roaring lion roaming to and fro, seeking whom he may devour.
Right.
But he is a spirit. Not a physical presence.
Right. In verse 14 says, because, but let me read this. It gives a little preview to verse 14 and 16. It says, the last three verses, God himself spoke to the psalmist about the reader who puts his or her trust in God, and his words include some precious promises. So verse 14 through 16 is to be read from a different point of view. This is to be read as from the point of view of God, is what the lesson is saying here. Y'all agree with that? Is verse 14 through 16, the lesson is saying here that it is from the point of view of God himself speaking to the psalmist about the people. But it says, verse 14 says, because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. And it says, though the trouble is still there, they can know that God is in control, and they can endure with peace and assurance. In verse 15, he shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble, and I will deliver him and honor him. It said, God declares to those who trust in him that he will listen to them if they will but call on him. And he also promises his presence in the midst of trouble. God didn't say, I will take the trouble away, but God's presence in the trouble is just as effective and comforting as our being out of trouble. And God honors those that trust in him. And in verse 16 it says, with long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. The long life part is, long life is relative to what you're saying. I guess the lesson here says a long life is also promised to those who place their trust in God. People may protest that some of the most devoted souls have lived relatively short lives, but when we take into consideration that the days they did live were satisfying, and that after they died, their satisfaction and lives continued in the presence of God, we can know that God has never gone back on His promise. Those who choose to trust in God and live for Him will find satisfaction in this life that will continue forever in eternity. So there's your long life. And where they will ultimately realize God's salvation. And there's one last part here. It says, most people try to find satisfaction in life by trying to control their life. And they'll ultimately fail. That's the biggest truth. And for an overthinker like myself, trying to control things is a really hard thing. I try to control too much, I guess, and then it's disappointment after disappointment because I can't control everything that I think I should, and it's just it's a disappointment to no end, and the overthinker in me, I guess, just won't let me stop. I guess I've got better. I'm not cured, but I've got a lot better. When I got the job that I've got now, I had to cut my overthinking in half, I guess, because not everybody does things the same way I do. And just because I overthink it and think that my way is the only way, it's not. There's other ways to do stuff. But to let go of trying to control the world, if we went around every day trying to control the things that goes on in the world, the things that goes on with our families, that's probably one of the hardest ones, is trying to control what goes on with our families, especially with adult children. And you try to control and try to keep everything going down the right road, and it steers off to the left and right, and you get so tied up in trying to control all that yourself, and it drives you crazy. And if you could just put your trust in God, if they'd put their trust in God, if everybody would, it would make it so much easier to trust God, that God can control things, that He is going to lead everything to the right direction in the end, I guess you would say. But false, what's that Saul saying about false control? Believing in control is, I've heard all kind of little proverbs, whatever you want to call it, sayings about having, trusting in control yourself is just mindless. It's to try to control everything yourself, and to trust in yourself to control things, to stay in line, to stay where they should be, or whatever, is a never-ending process, I guess you'd say.
Too many variables.
Huh?
Too many variables.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got. Y'all got anything else? The lesson next week will be in Psalms 127. Boy, that one is short. That ain't but 5 verses. Goodness gracious. Whew. I have a lot of cross-reference in that. That's it. We'll close with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this opportunity you give us today, Lord, to be here, to study your word, Lord. And I ask you, Lord, to please be with those who couldn't be here today for whatever the reason, Lord. And may everything